People who went after the one who got away. How did it turn out? The day I checked into a 2-star hotel in Switzerland alone, I was aiming to do nothing except find myself again. I'd just been let go from a job I hated and was sick of living life for other people, so I planned to just disconnect and find what the real me wanted. Until 7 minutes into my stay, someone slipped a handwritten note underneath my door. Hey, my therapist told me I should take risks. This is one of them. She left her room number on the note, and even wrote to come say hi within the next 10 minutes if I wanted to go grab lunch together. At first, I genuinely thought she just wanted to be friends. I was so unsure of myself I didn't believe anyone would shoot their shot with me. I was going to just ignore it, until I went onto my phone, and the first video that popped on social media was about not letting yourself get in the way of your happiness. And so, I gave myself a little pep talk in the mirror, and made the best mistake of my life. I went over to her room, knocked on the door, and waited for it to open, and when it did, my jaw dropped. Kat was the most stunning girl I'd ever seen, and my cheeks went pink. I know so because she pinched them and called me adorable, all while I giggled like a dummy. She invited me in, and the next 4 days were the best of my life. We laughed until we doubled over. We drew love hearts on steamy shower windows, even invented our own secret handshake. In those 4 days, I fell harder than ever in my life. But then came time for her to leave. Kat lived in Australia, across the world from me. In our final minutes before she left, she was crying about how she's never met anyone like me. And that's when I, without thinking, blurted out, "I'll come with you to Australia." The second I said that, her beautiful blue eyes just lit up. She went from tears of sadness to tears of joy in seconds, and even though my words weren't thought out, I knew damn well I meant them. Strangely enough, I was happier than ever hugging her goodbye at the airport. For the first time in my life, I felt like this was me. She texted me the moment her plane landed, and we picked up right where we left off, FaceTiming each other every night and raising online pets together. But then 2 weeks later, she sent a text. Her ex-fiancé had gotten diagnosed with cancer, and she said she owed it to him to be there in his darkest moments. She said she couldn't give me the affection and commitment I deserved, right? "You're the greatest guy in the world," was her last ever text to me, accompanied by a video of her in tears doing her part of our secret handshake. I remember feeling my heart physically shatter. It hurt so much I felt pain in my chest for months. I thought it would never get better. Fast forward 9 years, I was still single, and honestly, she was the reason. I went on many dates after her, but never found a single girl who made me laugh and smile the way she did. I remember accepting that I might be forced to settle, especially as I approached my late 30s. What were the chances of ever finding this again? But then one random day in London happened. I had moved there a few years ago to start anew, thinking maybe this was my city, and while grocery shopping, I spotted Kat across the aisle. I couldn't believe it. I kept staring at her, rubbing my eyes to double take, and feeling every bone in my body flutter. I calmed myself down just enough to begin making my way over, until I saw a toddler with her. My mind started racing, and I connected the dots that her ex-fiancé likely got better. They fell in love again and had a kid. I felt my eyes start to well as I turned around to walk away. That's when I heard her voice. "Alex, is that you?" I turned around so fast I became dizzy. Kat was face to face with me, smiling with that same beautiful smile I fell in love with all those years ago. I remember going red, just like the first time we met, and yet again like this was déjà vu. She pinched my cheek. We started talking, and the more we talked, the more my knees buckled. She told me her fiancé never had cancer. Turns out, he realized his mistake after his mistress left him, so he called Kat and begged her to come back. And when she said no, he created this whole cancer story, complete with fake medical results. He guilt-tripped her into coming back. It took her over 2 years, but she found the strength to leave him again. By this point, however, we didn't have contact anymore. She told me that from then on, she was like me, searching for someone who made her heart dance the way I did. I remember smiling ear to ear, trying my best to maintain a neutral, tough guy approach. "Oh, you think you're tough?" she told me in her sarcastic, flirty tone. "How about now?" she said softly, kissing my cheek. That was it. I melted on the spot. I swear my body became putty on the floor. We went to my place that night, and it was the most amazing time of my life. I felt like the luckiest man alive. Until the morning, when Her showed up at our apartment, demanding to speak to Kat. "I'm not leaving," he said, pointing his knife at me through the peephole. I grab Kat's wrist and pull her back from the door so fast we both stumble. We stand there frozen, both of us staring at the peephole where I can still see Ignatius's face pressed close to the glass, and the knife blade catches the light from the hallway. My heart pounds so hard I feel it in my throat and my ears, like a drum that won't stop. Kat's fingers dig into my arm, her nails pressing through my shirt, and I can feel her whole body shaking next to me. A loud bang comes from the wall we share with the next apartment, and Helen's voice cuts through everything. She's shouting that she's calling the police right now, her voice angry and loud enough that I know Ignatius can hear every word. He yells back through my door, his voice suddenly softer and pleading. He just wants to talk to Kat, he says. They need to work this out like adults. Then his voice switches in a second, getting louder and angrier, demanding that she come out here and face him. I watch his face through the peephole change with each word, from sad to furious and back again. My hands shake as I pull my phone from my pocket, nearly dropping it twice before I get it unlocked. I dial 999 and press the phone to my ear, while Kat backs away toward the corner of my living room. Her face so pale she looks sick. The operator's voice comes through calm and steady, asking what my emergency is, and I try to whisper the address and explain there's a man with a knife at my door. She asks me questions in this really calm way, like she does this every day, while I keep my eyes locked on the door and watch Ignatius's shadow move under the crack at the bottom. Kat slides down the wall in the corner and wraps her arms around her knees, and I want to go to her, but I'm scared to move away from watching the door. Ignatius starts talking again through the wood, his voice carrying into my apartment. He tells the door, tells anyone listening that he flew all the way from Australia because Kat belongs with him. He says I'm just some random guy who doesn't understand their history, that I don't know what they've been through together. His words make my stomach twist and turn because I recognize everything Kat told me about last night. The way he makes everything sound reasonable while making her feel guilty. The way he twists things so he's always the victim and she's always the one hurting him. The operator tells me police are 3 minutes away and I need to stay on the line with her. She says not to open the door for any reason, to keep it locked and stay away from it. Ignatius must hear me talking because the banging gets harder and louder, making the whole door shake in its frame. He's demanding now that Kat come out and explain herself, that she owes him that much after everything. Each bang makes me jump and I see Kat flinch in the corner with every sound. I hear a door open in the hallway and Helen's voice gets clearer. She's telling Ignatius loudly that she's recording everything on her phone, that she's getting all of this for the police. I move closer to the peephole and see Helen standing in her doorway across the hall, her phone held up and pointed at Ignatius. He turns toward her with the knife still in his hand, and she slams her door shut so hard the sound echoes. But I can still hear her shouting through her door that multiple neighbors are watching, that everyone sees what he's doing. The elevator dings at the end of the hall and I hear footsteps, heavy and fast. 2 police officers come into view through the peephole, and Ignatius drops the knife immediately. It clatters on the floor and he backs away with both hands up in the air, his whole body language changing. His voice goes calm and reasonable, like he's just been waiting patiently this whole time. One officer, who I later learn is Officer Josiah Birch, picks up the knife with gloved hands and puts it in an evidence bag. His partner talks to Ignatius, and I can hear Ignatius claiming this is all a big misunderstanding between him and his fiancée, that things just got emotional. Officer Birch knocks on my door and calls out that it's the police, that it's safe to open up now. I unlock the door with shaking hands and pull it open, and Kat stays behind me like she's trying to hide. Officer Birch is tall with kind eyes, and he immediately asks if we're both okay, if anyone is hurt. I start explaining what happened, the words tumbling out too fast, while Kat nods along behind me. Officer Birch writes everything down in a small notebook, his pen moving quickly across the page. Down the hall I can hear Ignatius talking to the other officer, his voice carrying. He's spinning some story about a lover's fight, about how these things happen in relationships, about how Kat just needs time to calm down. Helen's door opens again and she comes out with her phone still in her hand. She walks right up to the officers and tells them she has video of the whole thing, that she started recording the second she heard the commotion. Officer Birch asks to see it, and we all watch the small phone screen as it plays back Ignatius threatening us with the knife, his face twisted and angry, his voice switching between pleading and furious. The footage is clear and steady, showing everything. Officer Birch looks at his partner and they exchange a look that says, "This is serious." He turns back to us and explains that what we just showed them is assault with a deadly weapon, that this is a criminal matter. He asks directly if we want to press charges against Ignatius. Kat steps out from behind me, and her voice comes out stronger than I expected when she says yes. She says she wants him arrested and kept away from both of us, that she's done being scared of him. Her hands are still shaking, but her voice doesn't waver. Officer Birch nods and explains they'll arrest Ignatius right now, that he'll be taken into custody. He says we'll need to come to the station later to give full statements, but for now we're safe. He asks if we have somewhere else we can stay tonight, just in case, and I tell him we'll figure something out. The officers put handcuffs on Ignatius and start walking him down the hallway toward the elevator. He turns his head as they pass us and stares right at Kat with this look that's part begging and part angry, like he's trying to make her feel guilty and threatening her at the same time. I expect her to look away or hide behind me again, but she doesn't. She stares right back at him and her face changes from scared to something harder, more sure of herself. The elevator doors close and he's gone, and Kat lets out this long breath she'd been holding. Helen comes out of her apartment carrying a tray with 3 mugs of tea and tells us to come sit down for a bit. We follow her inside and her place is warm and full of plants on every shelf. She sets the tea down and sits across from us on a flowered couch. Helen starts talking about how she had an ex-boyfriend years ago who used to show up at her work and follow her home and make her feel like she was going crazy. She says it took her months to get away from him and even longer to stop jumping at shadows. She writes her phone number on a piece of paper and hands it to Kat and tells her to call anytime, day or night, if we need anything at all. Kat's hands shake when she takes the paper, and she thanks Helen in this quiet voice. We drink the tea even though I barely taste it, and Helen keeps talking about normal things like her garden and the weather until we both stop shaking so much. After about an hour, we head back to my apartment, and I realize I need to call work. I pull out my phone and dial Dominic, my boss, and when he answers, I explain that something dangerous happened at home, and I need a few days off. He doesn't even ask questions, just says, take 3 days and more if I need it, and asks if there's anything the company can do to help. I tell him I'll let him know and hang up feeling grateful I have a boss who actually cares. Kat and I get ready to head to the police station, and the walk there feels weird because everything looks normal, but I keep scanning every person we pass. The station is busy and loud, and we have to wait 20 minutes before Officer Birch comes to get us. He takes us to a small room with a table and chairs, and we spend the next 2 hours going over everything that happened. I tell him about the knife and the threats and Ignatius standing in the hallway refusing to leave. Kat tells him about the fake cancer story and how Ignatius manipulated her into coming back to him and how it took her 2 years to get away. She talks about the emails and messages he sent after she left and how he tracked her down, even though she never told him where she was going. Officer Birch writes down every detail, and then he brings in Detective Alec Rudolph, who handles domestic violence cases. Detective Rudolph is older, with gray hair and tired eyes, and he listens to everything again while taking his own notes. He explains that Ignatius will probably be held for 24 hours and then released on bail with conditions. Those conditions will likely include staying away from both of us and not contacting us in any way. He gives us an incident number and tells us to write it down somewhere safe. Then he says we should really think about getting a protective order through the courts because that gives the police more power to act if Ignatius violates it. We thank him and leave the station, and I feel completely drained. Kat looks pale and exhausted, and neither of us has eaten since this morning. We find a small cafe a few blocks away and order sandwiches, but when the food comes, I can barely eat. Kat picks at hers and keeps looking over her shoulder at the door and the windows. I realize I'm doing the same thing, checking every face that walks by even though I know Ignatius is locked up right now. Every time someone comes through the door, my whole body tenses and I have to remind myself he's not here. We give up on the food and head back to my apartment, and I spend the afternoon on my laptop researching solicitors who handle protective orders. I find one named Matilda Estes who has tons of good reviews for domestic violence cases, and her office says they can see us tomorrow morning. I book the appointment and show Kat, and she nods but doesn't say much. That night, she breaks down crying on my couch and keeps saying she's sorry for bringing all this danger into my life. She says she should have stayed away from me and let me live in peace instead of dragging me into her mess. I pull her close and tell her this isn't her fault, that Ignatius is the one who chose to lie and manipulate and threaten people with a knife. I tell her she didn't make him do any of this, and she doesn't have to apologize for his choices. She cries harder, and I just hold her until she stops shaking. Then I admit something I've been scared to say out loud. I tell her I'm really scared of losing her again, that the 9 years we were apart almost broke me completely, and I don't think I could survive going through that a second time. She looks up at me with red eyes and promises she's not leaving, that this time we're facing everything together no matter how hard it gets. She says she's done running and done letting Ignatius control her life. We sit there holding each other for a long time, and eventually try to go to bed, but neither of us can sleep. Every sound in the building makes us both jump. I hear someone walk past in the hallway, and my heart starts racing until their footsteps fade away. I get up 3 times to check that the door is locked and peer through the peephole at the empty hallway. Kat tosses and turns next to me, and I know she's awake too, even though we don't talk. The night feels like it lasts forever, and I keep watching the clock tick toward morning while my mind races through everything that happened and everything that might happen next. The next morning, we meet with Matilda at her office in Camden. She's maybe in her 50s with reading glasses hanging around her neck, and she shakes both our hands before gesturing us to sit down. I notice Kat's hands are still shaking a bit as she settles into the chair next to me. Matilda pulls out a legal pad and asks us to walk her through everything from the beginning. We take turns explaining the whole story, from Switzerland 9 years ago to the fake cancer lie to yesterday morning with the knife at my door. She writes down notes the whole time and doesn't interrupt once, just nods and keeps writing. When we finish, she looks up and explains we can apply for something called a non-molestation order. She says it would legally stop Ignatius from contacting either of us or coming anywhere near us. The way she explains it makes it sound simple but serious at the same time. She tells us the order would prohibit any contact, whether it's in person, by phone, email, social media, or through other people. Matilda walks us through the whole process next. She says we need to fill out an application with detailed statements about what happened and why we need protection. Then there's a court hearing in about 2 weeks where a judge reviews everything and decides whether to grant the order. She's really straightforward about it and tells us these orders aren't magic shields that physically stop someone, but they give the police way more power to act fast if Ignatius breaks the rules. If he violates it even once, he can be arrested immediately and charged with contempt of court. That part makes me feel slightly better. knowing there would be real consequences. Then she talks about costs, and I see Kat's face change. Matilda explains her fees for handling the application and representing us at the hearing. It's not cheap. I watch Kat doing mental math in her head, and I can tell she's panicking about money. She just got to London and doesn't have much saved up after leaving Ignatius and starting over. She opens her mouth to say something, but I jump in first. I tell Matilda we want to move forward and I'll handle the costs. Kat turns to me and starts to argue, but I shake my head. I tell her we can figure out the money details later, but right now her safety matters more than anything else. She looks like she might cry, but she nods and squeezes my hand under the table. Matilda seems satisfied with that and moves on to the next steps. We spend the next hour drafting our statements. Matilda asks really specific questions about Ignatius's behavior over the years. She wants to know about the fake cancer story, how he manipulated Kat into coming back, what he said through the door with the knife, everything. She types it all up on her computer while we talk. She tells us the pattern of behavior is really important. It's not just about the knife threat yesterday. It's about showing the judge that Ignatius has a history of lying and controlling and now escalating to violence. She says that pattern will make our case much stronger. By the time we finish the statements, it's past lunchtime, and my head hurts from reliving everything. Matilda prints out copies for us to review and sign. She says she'll file the application with the court today, and we should hear about a hearing date within a few days. That evening, I'm making dinner when Kat's phone buzzes. She picks it up and her whole body goes stiff. She shows me the screen, and it's an email from an address we don't recognize. The subject line just says, "Please read this." I tell her not to open it, but she already has. The email is long, maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs, and it's from Ignatius. He must have made a new email account since the police took his phone. The message starts with apologies about scaring us and saying he just wanted to talk. Then it switches to blaming Kat for abandoning him when he needed her most. He writes about how much he's sacrificed for her over the years, and how she's throwing it all away for some guy she barely knows. The tone keeps flipping between sorry and angry, and it makes my skin crawl reading it. Kat's hands shake as she holds the phone. I take a screenshot of the whole email and text it to Matilda right away. She responds within minutes telling us to save everything, but don't reply at all. She says any response just gives him what he wants, which is contact and attention. She adds the email to our case file for the court hearing. The next morning, Detective Rudolph calls my phone. He tells us Ignatius was released on bail yesterday morning. My stomach drops hearing that. Rudolph explains quickly that the bail came with strict conditions. Ignatius isn't allowed to contact either of us in any way, and he has to stay at least 100 meters away from my address at all times. I tell Rudolph about the email, and he goes quiet for a second. Then he says that email already breaks the bail conditions. He asks me to forward it to him right away and says he's adding it to the case file. He mentions this could mean Ignatius gets arrested again for violating bail. That makes me feel a bit better, but I'm still worried about what he might do next. Later that afternoon, someone knocks on my door, and I check the peephole carefully before opening it. It's Helen from next door holding a container of soup. She hands it to me and asks how we're doing. I invite her in, and she sits on my couch while Kat and I explain about the solicitor and the non-molestation order we're applying for. Helen nods along and then mentions that Bella, the building manager, wants to meet with us. She says Bella's concerned about security after what happened, and the other neighbors have been asking questions. Everyone in the building knows something serious went down, and they want to make sure it's safe. Helen gives me Bella's number and tells me to call her soon. Before she leaves, she hugs both of us and reminds us she's right next door if we need anything at all. I call Bella that evening and we set up a meeting for the next day. We meet her in the building's small office near the lobby. Bella is probably in her 40s, really organized and professional. She's already looked into security upgrades before we even sit down. She shows us plans to install cameras in all the hallways and near the building entrances. She's also arranging to upgrade the main entrance lock system to one that requires a key fob instead of just a regular key. That way we can track who comes in and out. She hands us both her personal mobile number written on a card and tells us to call her immediately if we see Ignatius anywhere near the building or even on the street nearby. She says she's already talked to the other residents and everyone's on alert. I feel relieved knowing the whole building is paying attention and taking this seriously. 2 days later, Kat has her first appointment with a therapist named Anastasia. She found her through a referral from Matilda, who said Anastasia works a lot with people leaving bad relationships. I drive Kat to the office in Islington and wait in the car while she goes in. She's nervous going in, but when she comes out an hour later, she looks a bit lighter somehow. In the car, she tells me the session focused mainly on safety planning. Anastasia helped her think through what to do if she sees Ignatius somewhere, or if he tries to contact her through someone else. They also worked on some breathing techniques for when the worry gets too big, and she feels like she can't handle it. Kat says Anastasia didn't push her to talk about all the hard stuff from the past yet. She just wanted to make sure Kat felt safe and had tools to manage the fear. That makes sense to me, and I'm glad she found someone who gets it. 2 days after that, I have my own appointment with Anastasia. I wasn't sure about going at first, but Kat said it might help, and she was right. I sit in Anastasia's office and end up talking about way more than I expected. I tell her about the 9 years Kat and I were apart, and how I never really got over it. I explain how scared I am that she'll leave again, that something will happen and I'll lose her just like before. I even admit that when Ignatius showed up with the knife, part of me worried Kat would choose to go back to him just to keep everyone safe. Anastasia listens to all of it, and then helps me see the difference between what happened 9 years ago and what's happening now. Back then, Kat was manipulated by lies and guilt. Now she's choosing to stay and fight. She's going to therapy, working with the solicitor, building a life here in London. Anastasia points out that Kat's actions show her commitment way more than any words could. By the end of the session, I feel like I can breathe a bit easier. The fear is still there, but it doesn't feel quite as heavy. Over the next few days, Kat and I start texting each other every few hours when we're not together. Nothing dramatic, just simple messages like, "All good here," or "Just grabbed lunch" with a thumbs up emoji. It sounds silly, but it actually helps both of us breathe a bit easier, knowing the other person is okay. I'm at work when I get her text saying she's home safe from grocery shopping, and I send back a quick, "Good, making dinner tonight," without even thinking about it. The system works because it's not controlling or weird, just two people checking in because someone dangerous knows where we live. 3 days later, Kat's phone buzzes while we're watching TV, and her whole body goes stiff. She shows me the Instagram message from someone named Marcus Chen, who says he's Ignatius's mate from university. The message is long and reads like Ignatius is some heartbroken victim who just wants closure, and would Kat please consider meeting him somewhere public just to talk. I grab my phone and start screenshotting everything before Kat can even process what she's reading. She's shaking her head saying she doesn't know anyone named Marcus, and this has to be Ignatius using a fake account or getting someone to message for him. I open my email and send all the screenshots to Detective Rudolph with the subject line, "Third-party contact attempt," and explain what happened. He responds within 20 minutes saying he's logging it and will follow up tomorrow. The next afternoon, Detective Rudolph calls to say they've issued Ignatius a formal warning about the indirect contact. He explains over the phone that this pattern of pushing boundaries is really common with abusers testing what they can get away with. Every single violation gets documented for the court hearing and builds the case that Ignatius won't respect any boundaries without legal consequences. Rudolph sounds almost pleased about it in a grim way, like Ignatius is making their job easier by being so obvious. He tells us to keep doing exactly what we're doing, save everything, don't respond to anything, and report every single contact attempt, no matter how small it seems. That Saturday, Kat and I decide we need one normal day away from all this stress. We take the train to Brighton and walk along the beach with fish and chips, letting the wind blow our hair around and tasting salt in the air. It's the first time in days we're not constantly looking over our shoulders or jumping at every notification. We find a quiet spot by the pier where hardly anyone's around, and I do the first part of our secret handshake. Kat lights up and does her part back, and we both actually laugh for real, not the nervous kind we've been doing lately. For maybe an hour, we just walk and talk about random things that have nothing to do with Ignatius or police or court dates. We get ice cream even though it's not that warm out and make fun of the seagulls fighting over dropped chips. It feels like we're just two people who found each other again, instead of two people hiding from a dangerous ex. The following Monday, I'm at my desk trying to focus on spreadsheets when my mobile rings with a number I don't recognize. It's building security from downstairs saying someone matching the description we gave them of Ignatius was spotted near the main entrance about 5 minutes ago. My stomach drops and I grab my jacket and leave immediately without even explaining to anyone. I take the stairs instead of the lift and come out the side entrance, scanning the street until I spot him across the road. Ignatius is standing there in a gray hoodie just watching the building entrance like he's waiting for me to come out. Security approaches him from behind and he sees them coming, turns around fast and walks away down the street. He doesn't run, but he moves quick enough that it's clear he knows he's not supposed to be there. Security follows him for a block to make sure he actually leaves, and I stand there shaking with anger and fear mixed together. I go straight to Dominic's office and tell him what just happened. He immediately calls in the HR representative, and we have an emergency meeting about safety protocols. The HR woman, whose name is Patricia, takes notes on everything and says they'll alert reception right away about Ignatius with a photo we provide. They set up a buddy system where I don't leave the building alone. Someone from my team will walk out with me and wait until I'm safely in a taxi or on the tube. Dominic says he's also arranging for security to do extra patrols during lunch hours and at the end of the workday. They take it so seriously and implement everything so fast that I actually feel emotional about it. I text Kat to let her know what happened, and that work is handling it, and she responds with about 10 worried emojis before calling me to make sure I'm actually okay. 2 days later, Matilda calls to say she's filed our application for the non-molestation order and got us an urgent hearing date in exactly 1 week. She wants to meet with us tomorrow to prepare for court and go over what questions to expect. When we sit in her office the next afternoon, she explains that we'll both need to give testimony about everything that's happened. She walks us through the types of questions the judge might ask and how to stay calm while answering them. Matilda says to stick to facts. Don't get emotional or angry, even if Ignatius's solicitor tries to make us look bad, and remember that we have documentation for everything. She practices some questions with us and corrects me when I start rambling or getting defensive. By the end, I feel more prepared, but also more nervous because it's becoming very real that we'll be in a courtroom with Ignatius in just 7 days. Kat has another session with Anastasia specifically focused on preparing her testimony. When she comes out, she tells me they worked through the shame and guilt that makes her want to minimize what Ignatius did to her. Anastasia helped her understand that telling the truth about the fake cancer story and the manipulation isn't being mean or vindictive. It's protecting herself and potentially protecting other people he might target in the future. Kat practices saying certain things out loud that she's never said before, like, "He lied to control me," and "I was scared of him." She says it felt wrong at first, like she was betraying him somehow, but Anastasia kept reminding her that telling the truth is not betrayal. By her 3rd session that week, Kat can say these things without her voice shaking or apologizing after each sentence. That weekend, I install a video doorbell I ordered online and add 2 extra locks to my apartment door. Kat helps me drill the holes and screw everything in, and we test the doorbell app about 15 times to make sure it's recording properly. We also put a chain lock on that can only be opened from inside and a deadbolt that needs a key from both sides. It takes us most of Saturday, but by the end we both feel slightly better having more control over our immediate space. The video doorbell sends alerts to both our phones anytime someone approaches the door, and we can see who's there before deciding whether to answer. It's not perfect, and it won't stop someone really determined, but it's something. Sunday afternoon, Helen stops by with some biscuits she baked and mentions casually while we're having tea that the toddler I saw with Kat at the grocery store was actually her neighbor's kid. Kat was babysitting that day as a favor because the neighbor had a doctor's appointment. Helen laughs about how she remembers that day because the kid threw a tantrum in the cereal aisle. I feel my face go hot with embarrassment, realizing I jumped to completely wrong conclusions and nearly walked away from Kat based on an assumption. Kat squeezes my hand under the table and doesn't make me feel stupid about it, just says she understands why I thought what I thought. But I'm relieved in a way I can't quite explain, like some worry I didn't even know I was still carrying just disappeared. The next morning, I head out to my car to grab something I left in the trunk and spot a piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. My stomach drops before I even pull it out because I know what this is. The note says Kat is making a huge mistake and will regret turning everyone against him, written in shaky handwriting that looks exactly like Ignatius's from the emails we saved. My hands shake as I hold it, and I immediately pull out my phone to photograph it from multiple angles, making sure the lighting captures every word clearly. I text Kat to come down and she appears 2 minutes later in her pajamas, reading the note with her face going pale. We don't even discuss it, just get in the car and drive straight to the police station with the note carefully placed in a plastic sandwich bag I grabbed from my kitchen. The officer at the front desk recognizes us and gets Detective Rudolph right away. He examines the note through the plastic and nods slowly while taking more photos with his official camera. Then he tells us something that makes both of us exhale at the same time. Ignatius was arrested this morning for violating his bail conditions after being spotted near my workplace by building security. He's being held until the court hearing now, which means we have a few days of breathing room without looking over our shoulders constantly. Detective Rudolph adds the note to the growing file of evidence and says this pattern of harassment is exactly what the court needs to see. We leave the station feeling slightly less terrified but still jumpy, and that night the stress finally breaks us. Kat starts crying while we're making dinner and says maybe she should just leave London to keep me safe from all this chaos. I feel anger flash through me, hot and sudden, not at her, but at the situation, and I say something harsh about how she's letting Ignatius control her decisions, even when he's locked up. She yells back that I don't understand how guilty she feels for bringing this danger into my life. We both end up crying on opposite sides of the living room, and then apologizing through tears for taking our stress out on each other when we're both just scared. That night we sleep facing each other but not touching, both of us too raw to do anything except exist in the same space. The next morning we talk it through properly over coffee, sitting at the kitchen table with our hands finally linked together. We agree that running away isn't the answer, that we need to face this together with legal protection and support systems. Kat decides to stay, and we commit to better communication when we're both scared and overwhelmed instead of lashing out. The court hearing arrives 5 days later, and we both dress carefully, me in the only suit I own, and Kat in a simple dress that makes her look smaller somehow. Matilda meets us outside the courthouse and walks us through what will happen, reminding us to answer only what's asked and stay calm no matter what Ignatius's solicitor says. We sit in the waiting area for 20 minutes that feel like hours, and then we're called into the courtroom. Ignatius sits across the room with his solicitor, staring at Kat with an expression I can't quite read. I testify first about the knife threat, the note on my car, and how his presence has made me afraid in my own home and workplace. His solicitor tries to paint me as someone who got between Ignatius and his fiancée, but Matilda objects, and the judge tells the solicitor to stick to relevant questions. Then Kat testifies, and I watch her hands shake as she describes the fake cancer story, the 2 years of manipulation, and her fear of what Ignatius might do next. Ignatius's solicitor gets aggressive, suggesting Kat is confused and making up stories because she's embarrassed about her choices. The judge cuts him off sharply and tells him to move on. Matilda presents all the documented evidence in a clear timeline: photos of the note, copies of the emails, security footage from my building, and Helen's video from the hallway. The judge reviews everything carefully while we sit in silence, my leg bouncing nervously under the table. Finally, the judge speaks and grants us a non-molestation order for 12 months, prohibiting Ignatius from any contact with either of us and requiring him to stay at least 200 meters away from our homes and workplaces. The judge notes the seriousness of the knife threat and the pattern of manipulation in his remarks, his voice firm and clear. We leave court feeling like we won something real, but also knowing a piece of paper won't physically stop Ignatius if he decides to ignore it. Matilda walks us out and reminds us that violations now carry potential jail time, which gives the police more power to act quickly if he breaks the order. She tells us to document everything and call immediately if anything happens. 2 days later, Kat gets a message from a number she doesn't recognize, just 5 words that make her hands start shaking. The text says, "You'll regret this," with no other context or signature. We screenshot it immediately and drive to the police station where Detective Rudolph confirms the number traces back to a phone registered in Ignatius's name. He looks frustrated when he tells us he's pushing for charges, but the Crown Prosecution Service moves slowly, and we might not see action for weeks. The waiting and uncertainty wear on both of us more than we expected, making every day feel like we're holding our breath. 3 days after that, I'm on the tube during rush hour heading home from work when I suddenly become convinced Ignatius is following me. I can't see him anywhere in the packed carriage, but my chest gets tight and my vision starts to narrow. I grip the pole next to me and try to use the breathing techniques from therapy, counting to 4 on the inhale and 6 on the exhale. My phone is in my hand, and I text Kat that I'm having a panic attack, and she calls me immediately. Her voice in my ear talks me through it step by step until I can get off at the next stop, where I sit on a bench and focus on her words until my breathing returns to normal and the world stops spinning. When I get home an hour later, Kat is already there waiting outside my building. She hugs me tight and we go upstairs where she makes tea while I sit on the couch, trying to shake off the leftover anxiety. We end up talking late into the night, and that's when she really opens up about those 2 years with Ignatius. She tells me how he started small, suggesting she didn't need to see certain friends because they were bad influences. Then he convinced her to quit her job because the male coworkers made him uncomfortable. He monitored her phone and emails, always with some excuse about wanting to protect their relationship. By the end, she had no one left except him, and he made sure she knew that no one else would ever want someone as damaged as her. Hearing all this makes my chest hurt in a different way than the panic attack did. I finally understand why she still flinches at loud noises and checks her phone obsessively, why she apologizes for things that aren't her fault. The control he had over her was complete, and breaking free took everything she had. 3 days later, we meet with Matilda at her office to organize everything we've collected. She spreads out a huge sheet of paper on her conference table, and we start building a timeline with sticky notes for every incident. The fake cancer story goes at the beginning, then all the contact attempts after the first court order, the knife threat, the emails, the note on my car, the friend who messaged Kat, the spotting near my workplace. Matilda photographs everything and creates a digital folder with scans of all the physical evidence. Looking at it laid out like this, the pattern becomes obvious even to us. Each violation happened when Ignatius thought he could get away with it, and each one pushed boundaries a little further than the last. Matilda says this documentation will be crucial for the next court hearing and any criminal charges. We spend 4 hours there, and by the end my hand hurts from writing statements, but I feel more prepared than I have since this whole thing started. The court hearing happens 2 weeks later, and this time the judge looks seriously annoyed when reviewing all the new contact attempts. Matilda presents our timeline with all the documented violations, and the judge extends our non-molestation order for another 6 months without even asking many questions. But the bigger news comes right after when the court clerk hands Matilda a document. The Crown Prosecution Service has decided to charge Ignatius with harassment and breaching bail conditions. Matilda explains outside the courthouse that this means a criminal trial, not just civil protective orders. The case looks strong because we documented everything, and the pattern shows clear intent to intimidate and control. We could be looking at actual jail time for him if he's convicted. I feel this weird mix of relief and new worry because a trial means months more of this hanging over us. But it also means real consequences might finally happen. That night, Kat and I have a serious talk about moving in together. She brings it up first, saying it would be easier and safer if we were in the same place all the time. I want to say yes immediately because I love having her around, but something makes me pause. We've only been back in each other's lives for a few months, and most of that time has been crisis mode dealing with Ignatius. I tell her I think we should wait until things calm down, make that decision when we're not running scared. She looks hurt at first, but then admits she was thinking the same thing and just wanted me to be the one to say it. We agree to focus on safety and therapy first, then figure out the relationship stuff when we're not constantly looking over our shoulders. It feels like the right choice even though it's not the romantic one. But I do start looking at new apartments the next week. My current place feels wrong now, knowing Ignatius has been there and knows exactly where I live. I search online for buildings with better security, preferably in different neighborhoods far enough away that he wouldn't think to look. Kat comes with me to viewings, and we walk through empty flats imagining what normal life might look like someday. We talk about having friends over for dinner without worrying about who might be watching. We picture lazy Sunday mornings without jumping at every noise in the hallway. The real estate agent probably thinks we're a couple shopping together, and neither of us corrects her because it's nice to pretend for an hour that we're just normal people making normal decisions. I find a place in Canary Wharf, a flat in a big building with 24-hour security at the front desk, and CCTV cameras covering every inch of the hallways and entrances. The rent is £200 more per month than my current place, enough that it'll be tight on my budget, but I decide to take it anyway. Moving feels like taking back some control over my life, instead of just reacting to whatever Ignatius does next. The building manager shows me how the security system works, how I can add approved visitors to a list, and anyone else has to call up before entering. Kat helps me pack over the next 2 weeks, and we blast music while wrapping dishes in newspaper and taping up boxes. She makes jokes about my terrible taste in books, and I tease her about the ridiculous number of shoes she's left at my place. For a few hours at a time, it almost feels like we're not running away from anything. The day before my move, Detective Rudolph calls with news that makes my stomach drop. Ignatius failed to appear for his court date on the harassment charges this morning. The judge issued a warrant for his arrest immediately, but Ignatius is nowhere to be found. His apartment is empty, his phone is off, and his car hasn't moved from its parking spot in 3 days. Detective Rudolph tells us they think he might have fled the country, possibly back to Australia, but they're monitoring airports and working with Australian authorities to track him down. He reminds us that the warrant means Ignatius will be arrested on site if he surfaces anywhere in the UK. I hang up and tell Kat, and we just stare at each other for a minute. Part of me feels relieved that he's gone, but another part feels worse somehow, knowing he's out there somewhere and we have no idea where. Moving day arrives and I'm exhausted before we even start loading the van. Kat stays over the first night in the new flat, and then most nights after that, even though she keeps her own place across town. We establish new routines in this space that Ignatius has never seen, never touched, never threatened us in. I make coffee every morning while she showers, and she cooks dinner most nights while I clean up after. We text each other when we leave work and when we get home safe. Slowly, over weeks, the constant tight feeling in my chest starts to ease just a little bit. I still check the locks twice before bed, and Kat still looks over her shoulder on the street, but we're sleeping better and laughing more. The hypervigilance is still there, but it's not quite as sharp as it was. Helen messages me a month after I move out, saying she's organizing a building meeting at my old place to talk about safety after everything that happened. I feel weird going back there, but Kat and I show up on the scheduled evening and find a dozen neighbors packed into the community room. Helen stands up front and talks about what happened with Ignatius, and then asks if anyone else has dealt with similar situations. 3 other people share stories about harassment or domestic violence they've experienced, and I'm shocked by how common it is. The building manager, Bella, announces new security measures, including better lighting in the parking area, cameras at the back entrance, and a new policy requiring all visitors to show ID at the front desk. Everyone exchanges phone numbers and emails, creating a network for emergencies. Walking out that night, I feel grateful for Helen, and sad that I ever doubted whether anyone would care enough to help. Back at my new flat, Kat and I have the quietest evening we've had in months. We order Chinese takeaway and spread it out on my coffee table, and somewhere between the fried rice and spring rolls, we do our secret handshake. But this time we're both smiling. Actually smiling, and it feels playful instead of sad like it has every other time since Switzerland. We put on a terrible action movie with explosions and bad dialogue, and we make fun of it the whole way through. For 3 hours, we're just 2 people eating too much food and laughing at a stupid movie. No checking phones every 5 minutes, no jumping at noises from the hallway, no talking about court dates or police reports. Just normal, and normal feels like the biggest victory we could possibly have right now. 3 weeks pass in this new rhythm of checking in and feeling safe, and then Detective Rudolph calls my mobile while I'm making breakfast. He tells me Ignatius was arrested yesterday trying to board a flight to Thailand at Heathrow, and the idiot used his real passport, so airport security flagged him immediately. I put the call on speaker so Kat can hear, and Detective Rudolph explains they're holding him in custody now, and the harassment case is moving forward properly, with his bail completely revoked because he's obviously a flight risk. We thank him about 5 times and hang up, and Kat just sits at my kitchen table staring at her coffee mug for a full minute before she starts crying. But this time it's relief, not fear, and I sit next to her and we just breathe together knowing he's actually locked up and can't show up anywhere. The next few weeks feel like we're learning how to be normal people again, instead of constantly looking over our shoulders. Kat gets a job at a marketing company in Canary Wharf and starts going to their office every day, making work friends and joining their team for lunch breaks in the park nearby. I go back to my job full-time instead of the reduced hours I'd been doing, and my coworkers stop asking if I'm okay every single day. We both keep going to therapy with Anastasia separately, working through everything that happened and figuring out how to move forward without letting fear run our lives. Kat keeps her flat across town but stays at mine most nights, and we're building something real with our own separate lives that also fit together. She goes to yoga classes on Tuesday evenings, and I play football with guys from work on Saturdays, and we're both making our own friends and routines in London instead of just clinging to each other. 6 months slide by faster than I expected, and suddenly we're sitting in my living room when Kat gets the email from the prosecutor saying Ignatius pleaded guilty to all the harassment charges. He got 18 months in prison plus a 5-year restraining order that kicks in the day he's released, and reading those words makes my chest feel lighter than it has in forever. We're doing really well now, better than I thought possible back on that morning with the knife at my door. Kat and I are taking everything at our own speed, not rushing into moving in together or making big promises, just building something solid with our eyes completely open this time. We still check the locks twice before bed, and she still looks behind her on the tube sometimes. But we're also planning a trip back to Switzerland next month to see that hotel where we first met. Life isn't perfect or totally safe and probably never will be, but we're choosing each other every single day anyway, and that feels like the best kind of victory we could ask for. Well, that is the end. If you are still here, I am both impressed and slightly concerned. At this point, you might as well subscribe. We have come too far to stop now.